Hey guys, today we are going to do a bit of a whiteboard session on why do companies move to AWS and the cloud in general, to help you understand why so many businesses are starting to move from the on-premise model into the cloud, or a bit of a hybrid. Now, most people think moving to the cloud is going to primarily save them a lot of money. And while technically that can be true in some cases, that should not be the main focus of a cloud migration. Sure, you can do some fancy things like shutting down your development environments overnight so you're not paying 24/7 for servers that you're not actually using. But ultimately, all you're doing is moving from a CapEx cost to an OpEx cost. And what I mean by that is, when you have on-premise servers that you're managing, you have to put up the cash up front to purchase a server. If you're a company, that means you might have to spend $500,000 redoing your server room. Instead of that huge capital upfront cost, you get to spread it out over multiple years, and CTOs who work in publicly traded companies where it's all about short-term quarterly results absolutely love this. So, if the main benefit is not cost, then why bother at all? I'm glad you asked. It comes down to speed, scale, and reliability. Let's talk about speed. If you're in an on-premise environment and you want to create a new application, generally you have to order the hardware. You have to wait for your vendor to deliver it. You then have to install and configure the hardware. And you also don't know how much of it you need to order because it's hard to gauge if the new product is going to be a success or not. Which leads into scale. In the on-premise model, you can be waiting months before that infrastructure is ready to go. However, with the move to the cloud, any engineer can simply write some JSON or YAML configuration code and have the infrastructure spun up within minutes. The speed that you can deliver a new product drastically increases. You reduce the time down from months to minutes, which is incredibly valuable. Next, you have scale. In an on-premise environment, it's very hard to gauge exactly how much infrastructure you need for your applications. If something gets wildly successful, you're not easily able to scale out to meet your demands. But by moving to the cloud, you can do some pretty cool things. A typical application architecture is to have a load balancer sitting in front of your web servers. So if you've developed a web application, you would have 3 small servers up and running and a load balancer sitting in front of that. It would then route the traffic down to your individual servers. And if you had an influx of traffic because the application is really taking off, if these 3 servers can no longer handle that amount of traffic, it will simply spin up additional servers for you. You get the freedom and flexibility with the cloud to scale out in such an event. And what's also really cool with the cloud is you have the ability to use managed services. So instead of having a server running 24/7, if you're a startup or you're testing out a product idea where you don't know what the demand is going to be, you could potentially use something like AWS Lambda. This is something I use for the back end of my mobile phone applications, but essentially, instead of having a server running 24/7 to handle user requests and traffic, you use Lambda where AWS will execute any code that you want, and you're only going to pay for the milliseconds that code executes. It scales infinitely and is really great for testing out new ideas. The final point we're going to talk about is reliability. In a typical on-premise environment, generally you've got a server room with a rack of servers in there, right? But what happens if there is a power outage? You have to make sure you have a redundant power supply. If there is network connectivity issues, or if the building burns down, you're in trouble. And this is one of the great benefits that the cloud does for us. We're essentially paying somebody else to manage the reliability side of the equation. In the example I gave where we had 3 web servers behind a load balancer, typically these will be spread across what they call availability zones. And just think of these as different distinct servers or buildings that they're in. So in Sydney, let's say Sydney has floods and you lose one of the availability zones. You've still got another 2 that are serving traffic. Really handy because even during catastrophic failures where you lose an entire availability zone, if you've done everything correctly, your applications can still stay up and running. And not only that, when it comes to reliability, because everything can be defined as JSON or YAML files, essentially what they call infrastructure as code, that then allows your developers to hook up your infrastructure into your pipeline. What that means is they can make a code change to their application, hook it into the deployment pipeline so that it deploys a new dev environment automatically and tests everything out to make sure it's working. Because your infrastructure can be defined as code, you are getting a consistent, reliable environment each and every time. In an on-prem environment, generally you would treat your servers as what they call pets. These are precious things that you generally look after and you take backups and snapshots of. Whereas when you move to the cloud, because everything's defined as code, we could not care less about them. We treat them as cattle and we simply kill them off if they're causing issues. So if you have an issue with one of your servers that's no longer processing information correctly, we can kill it off and automatically spin up another one. We don't have to go in and restore from a backup and manually triage the issue. Your overall reliability of your platform improves as a result. So to recap, while yes, you can technically save money by migrating to the cloud, the real benefits are the scale, speed, and reliability/availability of your entire network and platform. I am biased due to the nature of the work that I do, but it is an increasing trend that I've seen across the industry with more and more companies going to the cloud, whether that be AWS, GCP, or Microsoft Azure. So I definitely believe this is something worth learning about. Now, if you'd like to learn more, consider subscribing because I'll be releasing a lot more in-depth tutorials like this one. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and I will catch you in the next one.